At 7 o'clock sharp in the morning, the private breakfast room of the single-family villa lights up with warm white embedded ceiling lights. A long solid wood dining table sits in the center. The tabletop spotless, silverware neatly arranged on both sides. A temperature-controlled warming trolley parked beside the table. Western-style breakfast items and freshly pressed fruit and vegetable juices neatly displayed in order. The entire routine is the villa's long-standing, orderly custom. I take a seat at the head of the table, fingertips resting lightly along the cool edge, quietly waiting for the person across from me to sit down. Ethan descends from the second floor stairs on time, wearing a tailored, dark high-end suit, with his hair meticulously groomed, exactly his usual CEO in the office look. Even for a home breakfast, there isn't a hint of casual laxity. He pulls out the chair opposite, sits with a calm, graceful motion. To outsiders there's no sign of anything amiss, as if we still epitomize a perfectly harmonious couple in the eyes of the world. A servant bows, comes forward to pour him hot black coffee, then quietly steps back to a corner of the dining room, hands at his sides, remaining silent throughout. The only sounds in the room are the faint clinking of tableware. The atmosphere serene and peaceful, seemingly the most ordinary scene of countless ordinary mornings, devoid of any drama. Ethan lifts a small silver spoon, gently stirs the coffee, breaking the silence first, his tone casual and natural, with just the right amount of gentle concern, not revealing any hint of calculated probing. I've noticed you've been resting at home a lot lately, not much checking in on the company. Aren't you getting bored? He looks up at me, his eyes open, his posture relaxed, perfectly reproducing the considerate husband he used to be. I raise my hand to take the water glass by my side, the warmth of the glass against my fingertips steady and natural. Without looking up to meet his gaze, my voice steady and calm. Not really. No need to travel. It's actually quite peaceful. Honestly, I've always thought you shouldn't have to work so hard. Ethan sets down the small spoon, leans slightly forward, his tone becoming warmer, with a coaxing undertone. The company is operating steadily at the moment. All lines of business are on track. I've got you covered. You might as well completely drop all your ongoing matters and rest at home. Take occasional trips to unwind. His words unfold in layers, a gentle surface masking a clear objective. This isn't the first time he's urged me to completely step back from company affairs, but today's pleading is more earnest, with more meticulous and thorough phrasing. I remain calm, with no fluctuation in expression, simply replying, I have my own plans. Ethan doesn't stop there, continuing to probe along the same vein, revealing his intention. About your personal assets under your name, and your original equity in the early days of the company, have you considered custody and disposal recently? I know reliable asset management teams, highly professional, who can manage everything for you, saving you the trouble. This sentence clearly reveals the core purpose of his chat today. In the past, he would hint obliquely about company development. Today he directly references my private assets and initial equity disposal, with extremely targeted, clear intent. I look at him, expression calm, not showing any doubt, vigilance, or resistance. Simply shake my head. Not for now. My attitude is gentle yet firm, leaving no room for him to probe further. A faint momentary stiffness flickers in Ethan's eyes, but quickly gives way to a suave smile, no longer pressing, instead shifting to discuss the company's recent routine affairs and industry trends. The topics seemingly casual but actually consciously easing the atmosphere and masking the earlier probing. Halfway through the meal, our longtime exclusive butler arrives with freshly baked pastries. Entering the restaurant and gently placing the plates at the empty seat, his movements respectful and steady. He has always been meticulous and prudent, seldom speaks much, and never meddles in the host's private affairs, but today, while setting the plates down, he naturally utters a sentence. Sir, a few days ago you asked me to liaise with the law firm, and they have already finished tidy the documents. All records of marital assets and company equity registration materials have been filed and are ready for your review and verification at any time. This sentence was not loud, but landed clearly in everyone in the restaurant. instantly breaking the previously maintained peaceful atmosphere. Ethan's wrist holding the knife and fork trembled imperceptibly, so fast that it was almost imperceptible. Only half a second later did he recover to his usual calm, composed demeanor, smiling to mask it, tone light, as if he were talking about a trivial matter. Just the quarterly routine compliance check for the group. He looked at me, the tone straightforward, deliberately dispelling my doubts. The listing process is cumbersome. Every quarter we must standardize asset filings and verify equity documents to avoid ownership disputes later. A standard company task. Nothing special. The butler didn't say much in response, bowed slightly, stepped back to the side, and no longer interrupted. I listened quietly the whole time. Didn't ask questions, showed no curiosity or suspicion in the slightest. Kept a calm, relaxed expression on my face, as if I fully believed this explanation. I raised a hand to take a pastry, slowly tasting it, movements unhurried, letting the restaurant's atmosphere return to calm, as if that earlier hidden intrigue dialogue had never happened. But in my heart I knew that the quarterly compliance checks for a listed company are conducted jointly by the group legal department and the audit department, with open and transparent processes. There's no need for him to privately liaison with external law firms, much less to specially pull and organize marital personal asset records. Routine corporate verification only targets corporate assets and equity structures. It would never touch shareholders' private marital assets. This is the most basic commercial rule. Ethan's explanations were full of loopholes. What he called routine checks were merely carefully crafted excuses. Recently he had been privately reaching out to external counsel, secretly pulling marital asset records, with only one purpose: to preemptively sort out all my asset layouts, equity distribution, and personal property details, so as to be fully prepared for a long-planned asset division. On the one hand, he acted in front of me as a gentle, caring husband who respects me, while behind my back he was plotting step by step, precisely probing my asset movements, secretly scheming, attempting to seize all the assets and rights I had accumulated through years of hard work when I was completely unsuspecting. I did not expose his lies, nor did I question or confront him. I continued to maintain the peaceful atmosphere at the dining table. During the remaining breakfast time, Ethan completely avoided topics related to assets and the company, engaging in light-hearted everyday chatter, his tone gentle and considerate, perfectly continuing his persona, certain that I knew nothing about it and was still in the dark. After breakfast, Ethan stood up to straighten his suit jacket, glanced at his watch, and said casually, "There's a senior management meeting at the company this morning. I'll go to the group first and come back in time for dinner tonight." I nodded softly in acknowledgement. Okay. He turned and left the dining room, his silhouette tall and steady, his steps unhurried, with no trace of guilt or panic. It wasn't until the front hall door had completely closed and the villa returned to quiet that I slowly set down the tableware, raised my eyes to the direction where he had driven away. The maid came up quietly to clear the dining table, moving gently and orderly, not daring to disturb at all. The next afternoon at 3, I arrived at the exclusive tea room of the city's top luxury private club on time. This place enforces a strict member entry system, private and undisturbed, a preferred venue for top-tier business people in the city to discuss private matters and negotiate collaborations. It is also where Ethan consistently handles confidential affairs. Ethan had already arrived early, seated on the inner side of the tea bar. He had shed the gentle, homey disguise from yesterday, his expression calm, his aura restrained, exuding the pressure of a senior figure in the workplace. Beside him sat a man in a suit with a rigorous demeanor, his longtime private legal advisor Jason. In addition, there was Leo, a senior partner who regularly collaborates with the group. The two sat on opposite sides. Their placement seemed casual but was in fact a prearranged setup for the negotiations. I pushed the door and entered the tea room, moving with ease and without extra emotion. Ethan immediately rises to greet me, instantly switching back to a gentle, considerate posture, reaching out to naturally hold my wrist with gentle force and a gaze that carries just the right amount of indulgence and accommodation, perfectly sculpting the image of a loving husband in front of others. I thought you might feel bored at home, so I scheduled this little outing for us, he whispers, his tone soft, deliberately downplaying the purpose of the meeting, treating it as a casual couples gathering. I do not pull away from his touch, just nod slightly, and take a seat opposite him at the tea table. I remain silent and calm throughout, waiting for his next remarks. The tea room is fragrant with tea, the environment serene and tranquil. What seems like a casual chat, in fact, every detail of the setup and each person present is a trap carefully arranged by Ethan. There is no superfluous small talk. After a moment of seating, Ethan directly moves to the main topic and pushes a neatly bound document toward me. The company has recently secured a round of new project financing. To expand our footprint, we need a stable equity structure to back it, he says sincerely, his words precise and flawless. To simplify the approval process and avoid the hassle of equity changes, I drafted a temporary asset power of attorney. You just need to sign it. It will only be used to back the company's project financing and will not affect your personal assets in any way. As soon as the words fall, Jason, the lawyer, seizes the moment to add, with a professional and fair tone aimed at reducing the perceived risk of the document. Madam, this authorization is temporary and single-use, limited to this group's new project financing compliance review. It will automatically expire at the end of the process and does not involve equity transfer, asset transfers, or other core rights changes. It is a routine corporate expansion operation. Partner Leo also chimes in, helping to create momentum. This project has excellent prospects. There's no risk of loss. Ethan is also looking out for the company's overall stability and doesn't want procedures to stall progress. So please sign. The three of them harmonize in a coordinated show, layering the pretext to present a hidden trap as a completely risk-free ordinary business document, persuading everyone that it is safe. I lower my eyes to the document on the table, my fingertips lightly resting on the edge of the paper. The surface terms are orderly, the language official and rigorous. At first glance it looks like an ordinary authorization document with no glaring violations. But I know this kind of power of attorney's deadliest trap is never in the explicit clauses. It lies in the hidden additional powers and vague fallback details. Once signed, this temporary authorization could be extended indefinitely. With this document, Ethan could lawfully hold and dispose of part of my shares on my behalf, and could even use it in a subsequent divorce proceeding to prove that I willingly relinquished my autonomous asset management rights, thereby vaguely classifying my premarital assets as marital, jointly managed assets. This is the most common and most covert tactic in commercial disputes and divorce asset divisions, to boil the frog in warm water, making someone surrender their core rights without defense, making it extremely hard to protect rights afterward. Ethan fixed his gaze on me, a trace of urgency hidden in his eyes, yet his expression remained gentle and patient. I know you don't understand these business procedures, so I've arranged for the lawyer to sort them out clearly, fully compliant and legal throughout, so you won't incur any losses. After you sign and the project is launched, we can be completely at ease. He was certain I stay at home most of the time, rarely involved in business details, unable to see the traps hidden in the documents, confident that I would trust his husbandly status and sign without defenses. I did not expose him on the spot, did not question the terms, and showed no trace of vigilance. I lifted my eyes to the three of them, calm and serene, speaking in a steady, even tone. If this is the company's standard procedure, then I'll sign. A flash of triumph crossed Ethan's eyes, which he quickly concealed, and he smiled as he handed me the signing pen. You've worked hard. I took the pen with smooth movements, not a hint of hesitation, signing directly at the designated spot. The handwriting neat and decisive, with no delay. Unnoticed by anyone, my phone was secretly recording the entire time, fully capturing everyone's rhetoric, promises, and setups on the spot. Jason watched my signing motion the whole time, and after confirming there were no errors, He immediately stored the documents, quickly folding and archiving them, fearing I would flip through even one more second and discover the hidden tricks. Leo spoke up at the right moment to divert attention, feigning a discussion of industry trends to completely cover the earlier calculations. Ethan relaxed completely, his posture even more laid back, beginning to chat about everyday life, tender and considerate, as if the profit-driven scheming just now had never happened. He had already determined that he had successfully obtained my authorization, taking a crucial step toward partitioning my assets and embezzling my equity. I sat quietly, calmly responding to the chatter, fully cooperating to perform this scene of a tender moment. I knew all the hidden dangers of this document and could see clearly the three of them working together to trap me. But I still chose to sign and cooperate. He wanted me to hand over my rights voluntarily, so I went along and offered him the illusion he desired. He wanted to cloak malicious calculations in legitimate procedures, so I kept every inducement phrase, every false promise, and every deliberate deception as evidence. The next morning at 10, I drove alone to the group headquarters building led by Ethan. The first-floor lobby was bright and expansive, with steady streams of people coming and going. Staff and visitors moved briskly yet in orderly fashion. I came today solely to retrieve personal items I had previously left in the president's private lounge, with no prior notice to Ethan, deliberately avoiding all his advance arrangements and disguises. The casual waiting area beside the elevator was relatively quiet, with few employees lingering. I had just rounded the corner of the lobby and hadn't yet approached the elevator when I heard two familiar voices speaking in low tones, affectionate and casual, completely diverging from the professional hierarchy and etiquette. I did not stop. I glanced lightly over and clearly saw Ethan's personal secretary Luna standing slightly to the side in front of Ethan. They were very close, their postures relaxed and ambiguous, with no sense of professional distance or rules. Luna wore exquisite makeup and a sharp, professional suit, but she carried a private insulated mug in her hand, bending her head to carefully adjust the water temperature for Ethan. Her movements were natural and intimate, a familiar demeanor earned from years of close proximity. I paused in place, my figure hidden behind a column, listening quietly to their conversation without stepping forward or making any sound. Luna pinched a stack of bound documents between her fingertips, speaking in a barely audible, deliberately fawning yet confident tone. I've followed your instructions and organized all the backup materials. The residence records from the past 2 years, social dynamics, daily travel trajectories, and the weak corroborative materials you need. Everything has been categorized and archived, ready to hand over to the legal team at any time. These words were blunt and naked, tearing apart all pretense of warmth in an instant. The so-called marital harmony and considerate care were, from beginning to end, a carefully manufactured persona designed solely to collect false evidence against me. Ethan lowered his head to skim the documents in his hands, his expression cold and indifferent, completely shedding his usual tenderness toward me, his tone icy and utilitarian. Refine the data further. Add more details about her long-term withdrawal from the company and her disengagement from operations. For the upcoming lawsuit trial, these will be key evidence that she is incapable of controlling company assets and cannot reasonably hold shares. Luna immediately complied, then reached up to lightly stroke Ethan's suit sleeve with a suggestive smile. I understand. I've organized everything meticulous down to the last detail. Once this matter is settled and the equity and assets are divided, you'll be completely free and won't need to force this marriage any longer. Ethan nodded at her words, tapping the document lightly with his fingertips, his tone full of determined certainty. Be patient for a while longer. Once the financing project fully lands, the authorization documents take full effect, and the equity structure stabilizes, that will be the best time. By then she will have no initiative and can only passively accept the division. The two exchanged a few questions and answers in perfect coordination, presenting a long-planned marital calculation and asset plunder as if it were reasonable and without guilt. I stood nearby, listening quietly the entire time, my expression calm and unmoved, without a trace of emotion, let alone anger or astonishment. All the fragmented clues of the past instantly fit together into a complete context. Ethan's frequent probing of my asset movements, coaxing me to sign authorization documents, and deliberately pushing me out of company matters had never been simple career expansion. It was a layered preparing for divorce and asset seizure. And Luna was far from an ordinary personal secretary. She was deeply involved in the core conspiracy, covertly collecting my private information to assist Ethan in weaving traps. The most critical accomplice in this plan. Luna spoke again, her tone carrying a hint of secret probing. Are you sure she won't notice from start to finish? She signed so readily before. I've been worried she might have some inkling. Ethan let out a light chuckle, his tone full of contempt and certainty. She has lived at home for years, not paying attention to the world, simple and easy to manage in her thoughts. She fundamentally cannot understand the tricks in business documents. In her eyes, I'm just a husband wholeheartedly pursuing my career. She'll never guess that I'm laying out schemes behind her back. By the time she realizes it, the big picture will already be set, and she'll be powerless to turn the situation around. This arrogant judgment completely exposed his complacent mindset and solidified his malice and treachery from start to finish. I no longer lingered, my steps slow as I sidestepped the pillar and headed straight for the elevator. My footsteps rang out clearly. The lobby floor was smooth, and the sound of my steps was crisp and distinct. Ethan and Luna froze the moment they heard it, their movements suddenly stalling, the ambiguity and ease on their faces instantly evaporating, replaced by sudden panic. The two whipped their heads around, their eyes full of astonishment and tension, evidently completely unprepared for my sudden appearance here. Luna, at once, stepped back half a pace, creating a safe distance in the office environment, quickly reined in all familiar gestures, lowered her head and folded her hands, pretending to diligently straighten the documents, deliberately erasing all traces of intimacy and scheming just now. Ethan also quickly subdued his expression, the cold, utilitarian glint in his eyes fading away, instantly returning to his usual mild and proper demeanor. Stepping forward to speak in apology, I did not look away, keeping my gaze straight ahead and not glancing at them. My expression calm, my steps steady, as I walked directly past them, raising my hand to press the elevator floor button. Without pause, without questioning, without confrontation, Ethan stiffened in place, his outstretched hand hovering in midair, all the pre-prepared excuses and cover stories collapsing. He watched my cold, calm back, a flicker of panic and unease crossing his eyes, but he still couldn't quite determine how much I had heard, how much I had seen. The elevator doors opened slowly. I stepped into the car, turned to face the interior, and as the doors closed, I clearly saw the two outside with tense, panicked expressions, watched Ethan softly scold Luna for her carelessness, and saw their flustered attempts to tidy up the aftermath. At 2 p.m. in the afternoon, the outdoor cafes in the city center's commercial district were sparsely populated, quiet and private, an excellent environment for conversation. I avoided the eyes of all acquaintances, went to the appointment alone, and met my exclusive top-notch commercial lawyer, Alex. Alex has been deeply involved in commercial divorce and equity dispute cases for over a decade, meticulous in conduct and top-tier in professionalism. After taking a seat, I did not lay out any extraneous prefaces and told him all the recent details. Ethan secretly coordinating with the legal team to verify my marital assets, deceiving me into signing authorization documents, working with Luna to collect my negative evidence, and planning to strip my equity rights, everything that had happened. I also produced the complete recording and copies of signed documents, the whole conversation in a calm tone, with no extra emotion. Alex quickly skimmed the materials, his fingertips tracing the document clauses, and immediately exposed the core trap. The temporary authorization I had signed, on the surface a project financing guarantee, was actually a concealment of a bottom-line clause that allowed Ethan to report my equity attributes on my behalf without my second confirmation, which could forcibly classify my premarital assets injected into the company as jointly operated marital property during the marriage. This was an extremely covert fraudulent tactic in the industry, aimed at shareholders who were not well managed commercially and trusted by their partners. Next, Alex pulled up internal industry filing information to provide solid evidence. In the past 2 months, Ethan had repeatedly submitted supplementary materials to the commercial filing department, deliberately altering equity notes, obscuring the core facts of my premarital contributions and controlling stake, while secretly submitting asset split plans to pre-lock the evidence chain favorable to divorce litigation. In addition, he had also discovered that Ethan covertly transferred portions of the company's high-quality project profits to his privately controlled shell company, effectively diluting the actual value of my owned shares, step by step hollowing out the company's core assets to pave the way for future division. Layer after layer, the truth unfolded clearly, and Ethan's complete conspiracy was fully exposed. He not only wanted to divide my assets through divorce, but also intended to seize my business foundation entirely by tampering with filing, transferring profits, and rendering equity powerless, leaving me to walk away with nothing. Alex made an on-the-spot judgment. The other party's layout was meticulous, evidence collection timeline long, and if I remained passive and endured, by the time the other party formally filed for divorce and all evidence came together, I would be in an extremely passive position with immense difficulty in protecting my rights. I raised a glass of ice water before me, took a light sip, and kept my expression calm. There was no astonishment, no anger. All expected malice could not disrupt my tempo. I immediately authorized Alex to initiate a full-scale verification plan. First, conduct a thorough check of the group's original equity filing, capitalization flows, and startup cooperation agreements to fix the core evidence of me as the actual financier and controlling person of the group. Second, trace all private capital flows and project profit chains transferred by Ethan, preserving violations of misappropriation and hollowing out company assets as evidence. Third, lock in Ethan and Luna's improper interactions and malicious evidence collection traces, perfecting the evidence loop of their marital malice. I maintained a calm strategic deployment throughout, step by step dismantling their plot. Ethan, thinking he held all the initiative, relied on a false persona and covert tactics to gradually erode my rights, unaware that every one of his violations was piling up his own defeat. At the end of the discussion, Alex informed me of a key fact. Ethan has not yet formally filed for divorce and is still in the laying out and planning phase. This is my only and best window of opportunity to counterattack, the only and best window for my counterattack. I nodded slightly, concluded the conversation, and stood up to leave the cafe. The next day at noon, I walked alone to the company's top-floor executive office area. The entire floor was quiet and solemn. All the staff had retreated to the lower office areas, leaving only the top floor for the president's private use, highly confidential. I hadn't informed anyone in advance. Slowly I approached the solid wood door of the president's office. Before my fingertips touched the door handle, the clear voices inside leaked through the gap in the door. It was Ethan's voice. Removing all their domestic softness disguises, his tone was cold and hard, decisive, carrying the dominance and scheming of someone in a superior position, with not a trace of marital tenderness. Have all the materials been organized? Luna inside answered promptly, her tone respectful yet with hidden flattery. Everything has been organized. The legal department has approved it. All materials are favorable to us. The weakness in marriage you asked me to prove and the evidence of the company's contribution have all been completed. After a brief pause, Ethan's voice sounded again, each word clear and piercing. No need to prepare more. There's no point wasting effort. I quietly filed for divorce last week. This blunt honesty shattered all remaining facades. Outside the door, I stood quietly, my posture steady, my expression unmoved. Not a flicker of anger or astonishment, only listening to the continuation of the conversation inside. Luna spoke with a mix of surprise and probe. Already filed? Then she still doesn't know? None at all. Ethan's tone was full of contempt and certainty. She has long avoided involvement in core company affairs. Her mind is simple, and she's completely unguarded toward me. She can't possibly guess that I've already completed the pre-litigation steps. When the court summons arrive, everything will be settled. The scant evidence she holds will be incapable of overturning the situation. Luna agreed, her tone becoming more obsequious. You've thought it through thoroughly, laying the groundwork from start to finish. From coaxing her to sign the authorization documents to quietly altering the stock ownership notes, every step meticulously planned. As soon as the divorce is finalized, her premarital shares will be designated as marital assets, and you will rightfully acquire the vast majority of the equity, completely controlling the entire group. What I've built with hard work was mine from the start. Ethan's voice was cold and self-centered. She's enjoyed the fruits of my labor at home for years. Why should she hold massive original equity? In this divorce, I only want the outcome, not sentiment. Once everything is fully settled, I will have her leave with nothing, completely exiting my company and my life. The conversation inside continued, and the two of them carefully finalized the court appearance talking points and asset division details, plotting every step to exhaust all of my hard work. They had no qualms, certain I would never know about this hidden scheme, certain I would only be passively subjected to sudden ruin. I stood outside the door, silent throughout, not pushing the door, not speaking a word, not arguing a single sentence. Sunlight streamed through the corridor floor-to-ceiling windows and fell onto me. I stood tall, my face calm and unruffled, with no trace of anger or embarrassment. All the endurance, all the questioning, all the groundwork collapsed into place at this moment. I finally understood Ethan's full hand, his full malice and ultimate goal. He had never cared for even a moment of marital affection. From the beginning, he had schemed to seize the business foundation I had created with my own hands, treating my contributions as taken for granted and my trust as a weakness to be exploited at will. A few seconds later, I slowly pulled back my hand from the doorframe, moving gently and soundlessly, without making a sound. I did not choose to confront him on the spot or to disrupt what he believed to be a perfect layout. Rather than a rushed confrontation, I chose to grant him his own vanity. I slowly turned around, my steps steady, and walked away from the top-floor office area. Leaving the group building, I drove straight to the top-floor private law firm in the city center. The entire office area was well lit, and the special investigation team led by Alex had long since been on standby, ready to follow up on my counteroffensive plan at any moment. Without any extra pleasantries, I sat at my desk and synchronized everything I had just overheard outside the president's door, clearly informing them of the core fact that Ethan had secretly filed for divorce. The team immediately initiated an expedited investigation process, with everyone to the work. This investigation goes straight to the company's roots, tracing all original documents, capital flows, audit reports, and startup cooperation agreements from the group's founding to thoroughly clarify the source of its equity. During the investigation, the law firm also connected two key contacts: the group's first-generation investment advisor and the equity registration officer at the Market Regulatory Bureau, pulling archived original materials that had been sealed for years. A vast amount of data and vouchers were verified one by one, and the truth rapidly emerged. This group, universally recognized as founded by Ethan, derives more than 90% of its startup funds, core technology patents, initial channels, and network resources from my premarital personal assets and exclusive resources. The original shareholding details for the startup filing are clearly traceable. I hold 95% of the group's original founder equity, making me the sole practical controller and founder of the enterprise. Ethan has always been merely a nominal CEO I nominated, holding only a very small portion of incentive shares, with no core decision-making or asset disposal authority. The persona of him as the entrepreneurial leader, built publicly for years, was a false facade created on the basis of my resources. Meanwhile, the team uncovered his core violations. In the past 6 months, he has used his position to privately contact filing departments, and by using vague remarks and supplementary false business materials, deliberately tampered with the equity ownership description, attempting to reclassify my premarital full ownership assets as marital property jointly operated during the marriage. Not only that, he also forged signatures of some shareholders, attempting to quietly dilute my shareholding to pave the way for divorce and asset grabbing. All traces of tampering, forged records, and irregular filing processes left official archives and evidence that are complete and have absolute legal effect, unable to be tampered with or denied. Alex immediately outlined a complete counter-strategy. All of Ethan's deceiving me into signing the authorization letter, the privately altered equity filing, and the secretly collected so-called weak evidence are all based on fraud and irregular operations. As long as complete original vouchers are submitted, all of his groundwork will be completely invalidated, and he could even face administrative penalties and legal accountability for commercial fraud and false filings. I remained quietly observing throughout the investigation, my expression calm and unflustered. All past doubts were resolved. His arrogance, greed, and sense of impunity all originated from years of identity disguise and deliberate deception. He was enjoying the fame and status brought by the business empire I built, and he planned to kick me out completely and monopolize all the results. I immediately issued orders to finalize the full countermeasures. First, have the law firm notarize all original equity vouchers, capital flows, and irregular records to solidify the entire legal evidence chain and prevent the other party from destroying or tampering with evidence. Second, organize all facts of Ethan's marital malice, fraudulent authorization, and false filings to form a complete accountability material. Third, lock in the timeline of all equity changes to clearly map out the full process of the other party's malicious infringement. All night the firm's staff worked at high speed, piling up documents and notarizing data one by one. By dawn, all evidence was archived, forming a flawless, directly usable chain of evidence for submission to judicial and regulatory authorities. Alex synchronized the final result with me. At present, all evidence is fully controllable. Ethan's entire layout already contains fatal vulnerabilities. His confident divorce and asset seizure chess game had long since collapsed from the very foundation. At dawn, I arrived at the city's main high-risk control center with the complete set of notarized documents from the law firm. This center handles due diligence for large corporate assets and risk inspections. Its access level is extremely high and can directly verify and freeze funds tied to the company and related parties, serving as the core checkpoint to cut off illegal capital operations. Mark, the bank risk director I had pre-briefed, was already waiting, accompanied by 2 dedicated financial audit specialists. Without any needless preface, I directly submitted all inspection materials, including the original company funding flow, equity ownership notarization documents, and the full evidence of Ethan secretly transferring company assets and setting up shell companies for profit over the past 6 months. The audit team immediately launched a special investigation with full-speed tracing and reconciliation. The funding records clearly reconstituted all violations. Ethan used his CEO authority to repeatedly split and transfer group revenue from high-quality projects, bypass the corporate account, privately funneling funds into 3 shell companies under his name, and profit by artificial cost inflations and fake partnerships, effectively diluting the group's core assets and accumulating private capital after his divorce. A more detailed set of findings was simultaneously implemented. He even embezzled some of the company's reserve working capital to pay for divorce litigation fees and private investigative costs. Every capital flow trace was clearly auditable, and each irregular transfer left with a complete record, leaving no room for whitewashing or denial. Mark confirmed on the spot that these operations are typical high-level misappropriation of corporate assets and violation of company profits, severely violating financial risk regulations and corporate governance laws, fully meeting the freezing and inspection standards. There was no delay. The Risk Control Center immediately activated coercive risk measures, freezing all shell company accounts involved under Ethan and his private linked bank cards, cutting off all his illicit capital chains. At the same time, all of his recent incomplete transfers, cash outs, and asset transfers were locked and invalidated. In just 1 hour, the private assets Ethan painstakingly moved and stockpiled were fully locked and frozen by the risk control system. And the funds he relied on for divorce proceedings and future power grabs were instantly severed. Meanwhile, the audit specialists concurrently issued the official risk control inspection report, clearly documenting all violations in black and white, bearing the bank's official seal, and becoming legally enforceable hard evidence to support further accountability and rights protection. Throughout, I sat quietly to the side, watching all procedures unfold with a calm, placid expression. Ethan, thinking his methods were sophisticated, quietly drained the company's assets. In truth, every selfish maneuver was precisely within violation boundaries, and as soon as I acted, it would all be void. A timely message popped up on my phone. A work inquiry from Luna. Her words still carried a probing tone, pretending to be a routine work liaison to gauge the company's current funding movements. It seems Ethan has not yet noticed any anomaly, still immersed in his confident calculations, unaware that his exit route has already been completely cut off. I did not respond to the message and stood up to leave the risk control center. Leaving the headquarters of the bank, I drove directly to the exclusive Equity Registration Center of the Market Regulation Bureau. This is the final official portal for enterprise equity confirmation and change filings. All equity ownership results are recorded here as the sole legal standard. Alex and the core legal team had long since brought the full set of notarized materials to the scene, and the equity registration audit officer connected through a continuous green channel. All materials were complete layer by layer. Proof of full premarital capital contribution, initial capital verification draft for the group, original filings showing no changes to past equity, prohibited records of Ethan's false filings and tampering notes, and official bank asset verification reports, all with full legal effect. This transaction was processed with extreme simplicity and decisiveness. True ownership confirmation of equity, removal of all false notes, invalidation of Ethan's privately altered equity records, and restoration of my 95% original founder equity ownership in full. The audit process advanced rapidly, with the system back-end cross-checking year-by-year filings line by line, revealing a large amount of human tampering on the spot. In the past, Ethan exploited his nominal CEO role to privately submit modification requests to notes, deliberately weakening my founder equity status, exaggerating his own control, and attempting to create in the judicial sense a false fact of joint entrepreneurship equity, paving the way for divorce-based equity division. All false modification records were marked invalid one by one, and the system completely restored the initial equity state. Legally, the facts are decisively established. I am the group's sole core founder and absolute controller. Ethan only holds a small amount of incentive equity issued for positions, with no original asset rights and no authority to participate in core equity division. At the closing stage, the center synchronized with the group's supervisory board for filing. 2 supervisory board members were on site to verify and sign, officially recording the latest equity structure disclosure document, synchronously updating the group's internal shareholding system, the industrial and commercial public records system, and the enterprise credit public platform with all data, making it globally effective, irrevocable, and tamper-proof. At the same time, the system automatically retracted Ethan's temporary decision-making and asset disposal authority based on false equity notes. The remaining position authority in his hands was greatly reduced, reducing him to an ordinary professional manager with no qualification to interfere with the group's core assets and equity. The process was quiet and efficient throughout, with no notice to Ethan, no prior warning, and all steps quietly taking effect. In just 2 hours, the identity he spent years pretending to be, the group's helmsman, was completely shattered by official documents, and the equity foundation he longed to seize returned entirely to me. At the end of the process, Alex received a synchronized message that Ethan, noticing abnormal fund dispatch and certain authority losses within the company, was urgently investigating in his office, already panicking but still unable to locate the root cause, completely unaware that equity ownership had already been completely changed. I received the brand new equity confirmation certificate, with clear handwriting on the paper and a clear delineation of ownership. He plotted and schemed to submit divorce applications, tamper with documents, transfer assets, and lay out meticulously to seize power, sure of victory, yet unbeknownst to him. At every moment he secretly calculated against me. I was quietly eradicating all his foundations. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the group's emergency senior leadership meeting was hastily convened. After Ethan detected account freezes, revoked permissions, and abnormal back-end equity information, he immediately issued a notice for all senior executives to attend, aiming to take control of public opinion with the CEO identity, to forcibly characterize the upheaval and stabilize the management. The entire meeting was packed to capacity. Directors from all departments, project leaders, and shareholder representatives were all present. The closed conference room was tense. Everyone could sense a sudden disturbance in the company. Funds could not be dispersed. Some approval authorities were left vacant. Morale faltered, and rumors ran rampant. Ethan sat upright in the main seat, his face cold and stern, exuding a strong sense of oppression. He consciously suppressed his inner panic, maintaining the long-held posture of a seasoned helmsman, reaching out to press the desk with his hand, and spoke to set the tone. Recently, there have been unauthorized changes in permissions and fund risk controls within the company, suspected to be external malicious interference disrupting normal operations. His tone was firm, his words highly directive. My preliminary judgment is that someone has used private connections to illegally intervene in internal corporate governance, maliciously affecting the group's stability. I will conduct a thorough investigation and hold people accountable to the end. As soon as the words fell, the room fell silent. Everyone looked at each other, quietly guessing the source of the upheaval. Ethan swept his gaze across the room and subtly directed the blame toward me, deliberately crafting a victim image. A portion of the shareholders have long been detached from operations, do not understand the group's operating rules, and rashly intervene in core affairs. They intervene in decisions based on private emotions, causing the group to fall into a risk control crisis. He spoke with unwavering certainty, reversing black and white. I will submit an application to the supervisory board to strip non-operating shareholders of intervention rights, preventing such chaos from happening again. His words were bluntly intended to be direct, to use this meeting to publicly solidify the false label that I do not understand operations, intervene recklessly, damage the company's interests, and thereby completely strip me of the decision-making rights tied to all my shares, in order to forcibly take control of the entire group. Just as everyone remained silent and waited for someone to refute, the conference room door opened, and I walked in. No entourage, no preamble. Calm in demeanor, composed in expression, I walked straight to a vacant seat on the side of the conference table. When Ethan saw me enter, a momentary flash of panic crossed his eyes, quickly replaced by a hard, cold certainty. He believed I had no evidence and could only be passively argued with, still maintaining the initiative of the scene. You just happen to be here, he said, looking directly at me with a pressure-filled tone. Today's anomalies in the company, did you secretly have people operate behind the scenes to disrupt operations on purpose? The entire room's gaze instantly focused on me, and everyone held their breath, waiting for my response. Facing his public slander and accountability, I did not argue, did not quarrel. I simply slid a stack of official documents, notary reports, and a USB drive with audio and video onto the center of the table. Read these first, then draw conclusions. My tone was calm. The volume filled the entire conference room. The administrative director immediately stepped forward to collect the materials and projected them onto the giant conference display. Page after page of official records unfolded clearly. The first items that popped up were the group's original equity filing and notarized proof of full premarital capital contribution, publicly confirming in black and white my 95% original founding equity, and Ethan's only minor stock options. The entire room exploded in shock. All the executives' expressions changed dramatically, overturning years of perception. The long-told entrepreneurial myth of the founders' couple-led group had been a complete fabrication from start to finish. Before the crowd could recover, the screen continued to scroll. Ethan's unauthorized alterations to equity notes, forged material on contributions, and falsified asset attribute records appeared one by one, each accompanied by the official verification stamp from the Market Regulation Bureau. Immediately following were bank risk control financial audit reports, showing every privately transferred project revenue, embezzled company working capital, and shell company cash flow for cashing in profits, clear, complete, and indisputable. Finally, a clear recording echoed in the meeting room, the authentic sound I captured outside the office door. Ethan openly admitted that he had quietly submitted for divorce, intentionally partitioned the equity, intended to leave me with nothing, and joined Luna to collect false evidence. Every word was sharp and piercing. Once the truth hit, the room fell silent. All executives, department heads, and shareholder representatives saw the full picture clearly. The so-called company crisis had never been my malicious interference, but Ethan's long-standing selfishness, rule-breaking, marital scheming, and hollowing out of the company, laying hidden dangers. Ethan's face turned pale in an instant. His posture stiffened as the momentum and confidence from before collapsed. He didn't have time to stop the projected content, to defend and exonerate himself. All pretenses, all arguments, all slanders that twisted the truth shattered completely in the face of solid evidence. I looked up at him with a calm, even tone. I have never interfered with the normal operation of the company. I am merely reclaiming what belongs to me. You used your position for personal gain, tampered with ownership, hollowed out assets, and schemed to seize power within the marriage, which is the true root cause destroying the group's stability. The members of the supervisory board stood up on the spot to state their position. Based on the latest industrial and commercial equity disclosures and concrete violations, Ethan's in-office decision-making authority was immediately frozen, and all CEO duties suspended, awaiting subsequent formal accountability proceedings. The meeting adjourned in haste, and everyone left the room, no one glancing at Ethan again. After the executive meeting ended, the entire group building sank into a storm of public opinion. All senior executives and middle managers privately circulated the evidence from today's meeting projection. The truth about Ethan's marital infidelity, equity tampering, hollowing out the company, and deliberate divorce to seize assets spread completely. The once glamorous group CEO persona collapsed, becoming a laughingstock in the business district. Ethan was suspended on the spot by the supervisory board, detained in the conference room for a special inquiry, and unable to defend himself throughout, utterly embarrassed. I didn't stay for a moment longer. I drove away from the group, accompanied by Alex's legal team, straight to the People's Court Litigation Service Center to begin the final layer of legal reckoning. Staff from the Civil Trial Court and the Litigation Service Center had already coordinated in advance. I took a seat in the exclusive reception room and submitted, one by one, all the organized evidentiary materials for archiving, premarital property notarization, original equity ownership proofs, records of Ethan's commercial violations, recordings of malicious intramarital schemes, funds misappropriation ledgers, and records of fake evidence collection, every document bearing the official verification seal and possessing full legal effect. The case filing clerk checked the materials one by one and entered them into the judicial system's back-end with strict, efficient precision, with no omissions. After verification, staff immediately retrieved the divorce case file Ethan privately submitted, publicly disclosing his litigation demands and submitted evidence in full. The case file's contents were blunt and greedy, completely exposing his long-planned wolfish ambitions. In the complaint, Ethan deliberately concealed 95% of my original founder shares, claiming the group was marital assets created jointly by the couple, and sought to divide all company equity, marital property, and liquid assets in half. He also submitted false corroborating evidence allegedly gathered by Luna, fabricating facts that I had long been out of the family, neglectful in duties, and without business contributions, in an attempt to strip me of most of my asset rights under the name of the faulty party. A hugely greedy and utterly despicable tactic. Facing this flawed and wholly false litigation material, court staff immediately ruled that the case involved malicious litigation, false statements, and deliberate concealment of core ownership facts, clearly not meeting the standards for filing and adjudication. Not only that, I simultaneously submitted materials accusing Ethan, naming him in a real-time whistleblowing with my real name, for suspected commercial fraud, forged commercial registration documents, misappropriation of massive corporate assets, and occupying company interests through his official position. After cross-verification by the court in collaboration with market regulation and financial risk control departments, all allegations were confirmed true, with a clear factual basis and an intact chain of evidence. Within just 2 hours, the court issued a formal written ruling, legally dismissing all of Ethan's divorce claims on the spot and canceling all filings. The ruling explicitly stated that this was a typical malicious asset distribution lawsuit, where the parties engaged in fabricating facts, concealing material ownership evidence, and deliberately defrauding the judicial process, requiring corresponding legal accountability. This single ruling directly shattered the divorce for asset plan that Ethan had spent months meticulously arranging. His secretive, self-deluded litigation chess game was completely overturned at the official judicial level. All pretexts were void, and all scheming collapsed. Even more severe accountability followed. The civil trial court immediately filed and formally accepted my reports of commercial infringement and embezzlement, placing Ethan on the list of involved persons and initiating a specialized judicial investigation. Meanwhile, the Market Regulation Bureau issued a verification notice, opening administrative penalties for his forged equity filings and false business declarations. The Financial Risk Control Department added his record, placing him on the list of untrustworthy corporate executives with lifelong restrictions on his business positions and capital operations. Multiple layers of accountability piled on, completely sealing Ethan's chances of a comeback. He no longer has any opportunity to appeal, retry, or turn things around, and has lost his qualification to stand in the business circle. Alex is quietly mapping out the subsequent steps, informing me that all accountability procedures have been initiated, and we only need to wait for the judicial verdict. Ethan not only cannot partition any of his assets, but also faces huge fines, industry bans, and even criminal liability. I took the court ruling and the case filing receipt, my fingertips brushing the cold, orderly paper document, my expression still calm and unmoved. In the evening, as twilight fell and the city lights began to brighten one by one, I rode back to the group building. The entire building's atmosphere of work had long since ceased to be calm. Everywhere were murmurs among employees, senior offices were brightly lit, and everyone was waiting for the final outcome. After a day of equity exposure, high-level standoffs, and the court filing, there was internal upheaval within the group. The instigator of this storm, Ethan, was temporarily detained in the top-floor CEO office, awaiting final disposition. I rode the exclusive elevator straight to the top floor, where the area that used to belong to him was now deathly quiet and oppressive. The once busy subordinates and visiting partners had all vanished. The corridors were empty and chilly, with only 2 group supervisors stationed outside the office, fully supervising, preventing any collusion or tip-offs, and preventing Ethan from secretly destroying any remaining materials. I reached out and pushed open the heavy solid wood door to the CEO's office. The air conditioning was cool inside, and beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows stretched the brilliant night view of the city, expansive and dazzling. This was the capital Ethan had once boasted about, the glittering throne he had earned after years of effort and with my resources and groundwork. Yet at this moment, the man who owned the panoramic prosperity had long lost his former vigor, confidence, and composure. Ethan sat in the expansive CEO chair, his back stiff, his figure defeated. A full day of successive blows had completely shattered his confidence. His equity had been taken back in full, the financial chain frozen, CEO authority revoked, divorce proceedings dismissed by the court. and commercial accountability formally filed. Layer upon layer of blows had completely pushed him into a desperate corner. On the desk lay scattered private documents he had just organized. Most of them were the false materials he had used to embellish his entrepreneurial persona and fake business achievements. They looked incredibly ironic now. Hearing the door, he suddenly looked up at me. The usual cold calculation and condescension in his eyes had vanished, replaced by embarrassment, panic, and unwillingness. In just a few hours, from the group's helmsman who held the and believed victory was certain, he had become a fallen figure burdened with multiple suspected violations, banned from the industry, facing judicial accountability. The dramatic reversal had completely shattered all his pretenses. He quickly stood up, walked briskly to me, shedding all arrogance, his tone urgent and pleading, no longer the cold, selfish stiffness of before. "Can we talk? I can explain everything. I can concede. I don't want any of the assets. I will withdraw the lawsuit completely, and we can end it here, okay?" His speech hurried, his expression frantic, attempting to use one last compromise to gain a glimmer of chance. The man who had previously schemed to siphon off my assets and push me out of the company had now hit rock bottom, humbly begging for settlement. I stood there quietly, expression calm, eyes steady as I watched his dying struggle, unmoved, unsoftened, with not the slightest wavering. From the moment he concealed the divorce filing from me, certain that I knew nothing and would calculate against him, all remaining room had been cut off by his own hand. Seeing my silence, Ethan's emotions became more flustered. He reached out to come closer, his tone more humble. "I admit I was wrong. It was my greed, my confusion. I shouldn't have schemed against you, shouldn't have thought about the company. After so many years as husband and wife, are you really going to show me no mercy? I've lost everything, but once accountability lands, I will be completely ruined, possibly even sent to prison. Please, spare me this time." "Marital ties?" I finally spoke, my tone calm, yet each word hammered into the quiet office. "When you privately filed for divorce, hoping I would walk away with nothing, you didn't think about our marriage. When you forged equity, emptied the company assets, and misappropriated funds for profit, you didn't think about our marriage. You and Luna collude to collect false evidence, invert right from wrong to smear me, and scheme against half my life's blood, never once considering our marital bond. Every word I utter precisely pierces his final disguise, shatters his vain hope of moral coercion. All the faults were never a momentary lapse, but premeditated malice, meticulously planned, a long-term enjoyment of my resources and achievements, yet still insatiable greed and betrayal." Ethan's face whitened, lips trembling, no to argue, only staring at me with despair and remorse in his eyes. He finally fully understands that my past gentleness and tolerance, never meddling in disputes, were never weakness to be bullied, only because I cherished old feelings and left room for leeway. And he personally tore apart all warmth, trampled all tolerance. The current dire straits are all of his making. I no longer watch his collapse in shame. I turn to the supervising committee staff and the new acting executive in the back, and hand over the formally prepared personnel appointment and removal documents. The documents are clear and orderly, the terms precise, with official group authority and legal basis. My voice steady and clear, I formally issue the final decision. Effective immediately, Ethan is removed from the position of CEO of the group. All his posts, managerial powers, and project decision-making rights are revoked. All incentive shares under his name are withdrawn. All services and cooperative relationships terminated. And he is permanently expelled from all group systems, with lifetime prohibition from employment or cooperation with this group and all its subsidiaries and affiliated enterprises. The staff took the documents on the spot and immediately synchronized the announcement line, updating the group's personnel structure and industrial and commercial qualifications in real time across the network, making it irrevocable and unalterable. The dust settles completely. The position of president he held for years, the prestigious identity he relied on in the business world, this business empire he used every means to tightly control, from now on, has nothing to do with him. The myth he painstakingly built, the role of a devoted husband, collapses completely, leaving only stains and endless accountability. Meanwhile, I inform him of all final results, breaking the last strand of fantasy. Your divorce lawsuit has been formally dismissed by the court, and the malicious litigation records will remain permanently. The Market Regulation Bureau, Financial Risk Control, and judicial authorities have launched multitudes of accountability processes. Your embezzlement, commercial fraud, false reporting, and other illegal acts are fully evidenced and archived, with no one able to intervene or revoke. All proceeds from asset transfers and misappropriated funds will be recovered in full, and you also face enormous administrative penalties and a criminal trial. After hearing all this, Ethan sways, staggers back half a step, heavily leans on the edge of the desk. The last flicker of light in his eyes finally dies, and he falls into a deathly stillness. The career, wealth, fame, and future he took pride in, within a single day, have utterly vanished. He calculated his life, plotted to the utmost, and in the end it was never me he computed, but his own life. I walk slowly to the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the brilliant city lights below. This city's top-tier business map, from the foundation I laid with my own hands, to being opportunistically seized for glory, to today being entirely reclaimed and once again under my control, has been a full arc, and at last, fulfilled. I have never deliberately fought to win or lose. I simply refuse to let genuine feelings be trampled, trust consumed, or hard work plundered. If others show me a foot, I respond with 3 steps. If others cheat me by an inch, I reclaim every inch. If he wants everything I have, I will take back all gifts and leave him with nothing. If he schemes to destroy my foundation, I will cut off his retreat entirely. So the consequences will be his own. The evening breeze slips softly through the gaps of the floor-to-ceiling window, dispersing the long-held endure, suppression, and calculating gloom. All false warmth, vile schemes, and greedy plunder fade away as the curtain falls. The game is over, and the wicked reap what they sow, while I steadily reclaim all the glory and the realm that belong to me. From now on, there are no more entanglements, no more betrayals. I remain the sole and absolute ruler of this commercial empire, the breeze at ease in my grasp, with everything under my control. The prelude. A week after the turmoil, a week after the upheaval. All orders within the group have completely returned to normal. The business information, ownership structure, and personnel disclosures have all been updated. My 95% absolute controlling stake remains firmly in place, becoming an unassailable established fact. All the false halos and power structures that once attached to Ethan have been thoroughly cleaned up and separated. The group has shed its past murky atmosphere and undergone a top-to-bottom renewal. I did not deliberately trumpet my takeover of power. I quietly returned to the backstage and firmly controlled the core lifeblood of the entire business empire. The first to come to a definitive end was Luna's fate. The day after Ethan's downfall, the group HR issued dismissal notices based on company rules and the verified violations, formally removing her. She had relied on workplace conveniences to assist executives in malicious personal gain, participate in asset scheming, and fabricate false evidence, having long crossed the corporate red line with no chance of remedy. Originally, one might think that with years of close service, she could still seek a normal position in the business circle. But when the group synchronized her violation records with major industry associations and shared risk control systems across business circles, all fellow enterprises yanked her onto their blacklists. No one dared to hire her. No one dared to cooperate. The once glamorous executive secretary disappeared from the high-end professional social circles entirely. She attempted to privately contact me to apologize and beg for mercy, sending countless messages that all sank without a trace, and was finally forced to leave this city, thus ruining her years of hard work. Taking the shortcut by clinging to the wicked is always the most deadly path. Ethan's situation grew more desperate by the day. After losing all positions, equity, and reputation, he completely became the butt of the business circle's jokes. Partners, networks, and social circles members who once surrounded him scattered far and wide. No one was willing to stay for a fraudulent, embezzling, untrustworthy person liable for business fraud. The once cherished glory diminished to zero, leaving only an appearance to be avoided. A state of embarrassment. Legal and administrative accountability processes proceeded steadily. All remaining assets under his name were frozen and audited. Illegal transfers and embezzled company funds were fully recovered. And together with heavy administrative penalties, all of his years of accumulated wealth were exhausted. Within a few days, he went from a well-valued group CEO to heavily indebted and penniless. I had received synchronized messages from the law firm. Ethan had once attempted to sell his remaining personal belongings to cover debts. Even wanted to use his connections to plead with me again, willing to give up all claims and walk away clean, hoping I would drop the suit and let him go. But all pleas and compromises had already lost any meaning. From the moment he secretly filed for divorce and schemed to calculate against my efforts, the ending was already predetermined. My counterattack has never been out of momentary impulse, but a justifiable reckoning for all malice. With no room for sentiment, on a weekend afternoon, I returned to the long-idle top-floor executive office. It had already undergone a comprehensive renovation, with all old items removed and the traces of past oppression and scheming cleared. Sunlight streamed through the full-length windows, bright and warm, filling the entire office and dispelling the shadows and narrowness of former days. I stood by the window, overlooking the city's bustle, with no ripple in my heart, no after-revenge euphoria, no sense of closure, only extreme calm remained. I had never pursued victory or defeat, nor craved power or prestige. When I founded this enterprise, it was only to secure a stable foothold and grounding. I never intended to scheme against anyone or plunder anyone's interests. It is people's insatiable desires and greed, and others' betrayal of trust and trampling of warmth, that shattered the stable situation. I endured and yielded step by step, but what I gained in return was ever-expanding betrayal and calculated extermination. Inwardly, I had no choice but to withdraw all gifts and protect my own efforts and bottom line. Over the past few years of marriage, it seemed we walked side by side, yet I was actually paving the way alone, sustaining the act, supporting a facade of affection that fueled his years of glamorous fame. Now, with the dream ended, all false bonds are stripped away. The obligations and hypocritical connections that did not belong to me are wiped clean. What remains is a completely own, unclouded landscape. The assistant quietly entered to report progress on various tasks. The group's new projects are steadily landing. The funding chain is healthy and abundant. The team's atmosphere is orderly and proper. Everything is moving in a direction of better outcomes. With no internal strife or scheming, the entire group has shed its heavy load, and its development momentum surpasses what it was before. I nod slightly and softly order step-by-step progress. From now on, in the rest of my life, I need not compromise for anyone. I need not maintain the feigned deep affection of a husband and wife. I need not tolerate the greed and selfishness of all. I will guard the business map I created with my own hands, hold on to my resolve and freedom, stay lucid, independent, and at ease. The most solid confidence in the world is never others' favor or companionship, but the mountains and base I hold in my own hands. I will reclaim everything with my own hands, protect all my original intentions and efforts, and from now on the breeze will be refreshing. The road ahead will be smooth, and everything will be as my heart desires. All betrayals become a part of the past. All malice will inevitably rebound. My life henceforth opens a brand new chapter.